You got me? Got you, okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the evening show. We have a very special guest, a few special guests. I'd like to start the evening with a Pledge of Allegiance, and if Mike Moy would do us the honor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We have a special group tonight. We have Clarence here. He's going to be our speaker. Next to him, we have Chuck Klein. And we find out tonight, Clarence had an automobile business in Chambersburg, that type of stuff. Chuck came out of the Navy. He actually ran the Higgins boats into the beaches. He was on MacArthur's command ship. And they met now for the first time. And over here, we have Steve Busan, who's promised to speak for me 3 times. And I said, that's it, you get no more chances.
Get a date.
He had a date and we'll set it. He was in the bridge building capacity in World War II. From there he went to helicopters. What was the guy's name that built the helicopters over there? Sikorsky, right. And then you went down to you were in Vietnam, you ran a 2,000 man supply depot there. And then I have pictures of you standing at Kennedy's funeral with Jackie and the kids. So, a lot of history here. Now I'm going to turn it over to our Vice President and let you do the introduction for the Major.
I'll just go up to the front there. Thank you, Charlie. And I'm very happy to see that Charlie's feeling better and doing better. He's back with us this month here for the meeting. So before I do the general business and other announcements and introduction, I think it's probably most appropriate to start with a special event tonight. I'll come back and say a few words after this, but I think up front, our most important moment for the evening, well, besides the speaker obviously speaking, is a special thing. It's kind of a surprise, actually. Harold, we want to surprise you a little bit tonight. So we have Major General Mark McCormick here tonight. We're honored to have him here, the commander of the 28th Infantry Division. And Harold just happened to fight in that same outfit, the 28th Division in World War II, in combat in the European theater. And I'll talk a little bit more about his service when I introduce Harold a little bit later. But I think I want to start the evening, and I think that's appropriate to have General McCormick come up, and I'll hand the mic over to him to do his presentation, and we want to have a nice surprise for Harold. So I'll have General McCormick come up, and thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As stated, I'm the current commander of the oldest division in the Army, the 28th Infantry Division. Trace our lineage back to March 12th. 1879, and we can even stretch it further all the way to the days of Ben Franklin when we get into the conversations about the Associators. But it's one iron soldier that I'm here to actually honor and make a presentation to. When we heard that Harold was going to be speaking tonight, I wanted to make sure that on behalf of the entire division, we took a moment of time from the Iron Division just to come and honor his service, as well as to hear his comments about his time in the 28th during World War II. So I'm pleased to present him with a plaque from the Iron Division that reads, presented to Harold Engel, in recognition of your outstanding support and service with the 28th Infantry Division during World War II. Your contribution and sacrifice was instrumental as a defender of freedom and the American way of life as part of America's greatest generation. So it's with great pleasure that on behalf of the over 12,000 Iron soldiers currently serving here in Pennsylvania in the 28th Infantry Division, that Harold, I present this to you as well. And also in honor of your service, I would like to present present you with a Division Commander's Coin for Excellence. I'm sure you probably picked one of those up along the way when you were traveling through France, but in case you lost it, here's another one for you as well.
So I just want to say a few more words before Harold gets started. And thanks to everyone for being here. And we're really honored to have at least 3 World War II veterans here tonight. Steve, Chuck, and Harold right here behind me. And so I'll try to keep this somewhat brief so Harold can get started. But we do welcome you to, well, also thank other veterans that are here too. I want to thank other veterans here as well. And thanks all of you for being here, everyone else. So we do have the helmet committee in the background that they're happy to take contributions to help keep our operations keep going, which we do have expenses that we have incur for, like, sometimes speakers stay in hotel rooms for the evening or for transportation and whatnot. So it does have some expenses to operate. I do want to say real quick also about our October speaker, just so you're aware, if you're not aware already. It's all going to be all about the 17th Airborne Division next month, October meeting. We have a speaker called, his name is David Short. He's an Army veteran himself, actually, not a World War II, but about a 20-year service after World War II. And he will talk about the 17th Airborne World War II, his presentation. Then we also have Richard Weaver, a World War II 17th Airborne veteran, will be joining Mr. Short that evening to add to the presentation and have actually a World War II veteran being there as well next month as well. Okay, now let's turn to Harold. So I don't want to keep you waiting too much longer, so sorry, Harold, but I'll try to keep it brief. And I met Harold back in the World War II in Gettysburg weekend. Years back, he did a presentation there, and I got his contact information. So I was happy to give him the call and you got him lined up for us here to speak. And so I don't want to take too much, steal his thunder too much here, but I mean, for a man who survived combat in the greatest war in human history in Europe, he fought nobly. He had a bullet go through his helmet and survived that. He has the bullet here, actually. He can show you if you come shake his hand later. He has it in his pocket for safekeeping. He also he has a replica potato masher he'll talk about later that he had a grenade thrown at him, and thank God it did not go off, because otherwise he might not be here before us here tonight. So we're pleased that it was a German dud grenade that went off. And this is, by the way, a replica grenade, not a real one we have up front, just by the way. Okay, guys, thank you. And let's turn it over to Harold. So, Harold, he has a lapel microphone, so he should be good. Thank you, Harold, and we look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. It's an honor for me to be here tonight to speak to you. I notice Chuck Klein brought a very beautiful lady with him, and I had to bring a man to bring me. But anyways, we're here to talk about the 28th Infantry Division and my experience during World War II. First of all, I was born on June the 27th, 1923. You all know where the Lincoln Highway is, don't you? That was a dirt road whenever I was born. And we lived my father bought a house. It was at number 764 Lincoln Way East. And that's where I was born. They asked me where I was born, and I said, at home, upstairs in the front room. And that's when I was a kid. They used to tease me about that. But anyways, the trolley car went by our house. We could go from my house out to Caledonia State Park for a dime, and a dime to come back. But they since have taken up the trolley tracks, and it's a paved highway now, but it did not happen until the early 30s. My father was in the poultry and egg business. He did not raise poultry. he bought the poultry and the eggs from the farmer. And he acted more like a broker and a dealer, and he marketed those items in the cities like Baltimore, Washington, and Philadelphia, and New York City. And he had been in that business at the time that I was born. I had one sister. She was the oldest of our family. She has since passed away, and then Doug's father was my older brother. His name was Glenn. And then there was another younger than me, Richard, and all of them have passed on. I was helping my father in the business. Originally, when the war had started, when the Japanese had first bombed Pearl Harbor, I was going to school in Philadelphia to the Pierce School of Business. It's on Pine Street in Philadelphia, and I took a one-year course in general business there, and it was in 1941, whenever Pearl Harbor was bombed. I was still in that school, and I graduated in June, and I came home and started to work in the business with my father. Now, my older brother was helping in the business as well, but he knew he was going to be drafted. And he says, I don't want to get into the infantry. He had a pilot's license. He was able to fly. And he said, I want to be in the Air Corps because I don't want to be in the infantry. So he came down in about February of 1942, and he enlisted what he thought was going to be in the Air Corps. Instead, he was sent to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, in the tank destroyers. He was with the tank destroyers for 2 years. And he kept writing letters asking for transfer, telling that he had a pilot's license. He never got an answer, never returned anything. So one day, a colonel walked into his office. He was a company clerk. And he asked the colonel, he says, I keep writing letters to get transferred. Why don't they answer my letters? He said, well, the reason why they won't answer is because you're just a regular serviceman. He says, go to officers candidate school, get your commission, then write your letter. And that's what he did. And he was transferred eventually then to the Air Corps. And he was in the Air Corps another 2 years. But so far as I was concerned, my father needed me in the business, and he was able to get me deferred. It was about 2 times. But the third time when he asked for a deferment, they rejected it. It said that he's going to have to be drafted. So on July the 3rd, 1944, I was inducted into the service at New Cumberland. Since July 4th was a holiday, nothing happened on the holiday. But the next day, I was on a troop train headed for Camp Walters, Texas. And that's at near a small town called Mineral Wells. There were a lot of oil wells in that area. It's about 50 miles from Fort Worth. So that's where I took my basic training. And the basic training was pretty strenuous, especially in the South, during July, August, and September. And those 20-mile hikes didn't go all that well, but we made it. After my basic training, I was able to go home for a short furlough, and then I was to report back to Fort George Meade. And I was there being processed, and as soon as the processing was over, after a few days, I was sent to Camp Colmar, New Jersey. Now this is in the wintertime. It's almost Christmas when I get to Camp Colmar. And then on Christmas Eve, we were put on a troop train, taken to the port of New York City, and we had to embark on a Norwegian troop ship. It was a ship that was converted to a troop ship. I don't remember the name of the ship anymore, but anyways, it was Norwegian. And so we were there Christmas Eve on this ship, and that was probably the most depressing time I had while I was in the service. We could hear the Christmas music out on the docks, and here we are on the ship, not able to get off. And on Christmas Day, I think they gave the crew the liberty to go into New York City, spend the day in New York City, because the very next morning, on December 26th, very early in the morning, our ship pulls out of the harbor, and we cross the Atlantic, and it's taken about 7 days. And we, during the daytime, we pulled into Liverpool, England. And we never got off the ship. In other words, that night, under the cover of darkness, we crossed the English Channel, and we debarked at Le Havre, France. And that was the first I knew a war was really going on, because of the whole harbor area and all the buildings that were in that area were bombed out. In fact, they had a makeshift gangplank for us to walk down, get off the ship, and to walk up to another processing center. And as we walked up the streets, bulldozers had moved debris off so that the troops could walk up the street without stumbling over all the debris that there was. So when we got to the processing center at Le Havre, we were issued our rifles. We didn't have rifles on the ship. We were issued the rifles, the M1, and whatever we needed to go into combat. So I didn't know where I was going to be assigned at the time, but after the processing was done, they put us on a truck and took us to where we were supposed to go. And in my case, I was a replacement. The Battle of the Bulge had already been in play. In other words, the Battle of the Bulge started December 16, 1944, and I was still in the United States at that time, and I didn't join the 28th Infantry Division until about the 2nd or 3rd of January 1945. Like I said, I was a replacement. Now, I think the reason why I was assigned to the 28th is because during the early part of the Battle of the Bulge, the division got shot up pretty well. In fact, even the members of the band had to put down their instruments, pick up their carbines, and go out and fight like everybody else was doing. And they lost a lot of soldiers at that time, and I think that's the reason why I was a replacement to go in there. So where I was taken, the 28th Division had already liberated a city called Colmar, France. Colmar, C-O-L-M-A-R. And that's where I joined the 28th Division in the 112th Infantry. And at the time, I was in Company I. And eventually I got to another company called Company C. But anyways, the next day, we had a visit by our commanding general of the 28th, General Norman Coda. And I don't know this for sure, but I have an idea that he was trying to arrange for someone to go up into the Vosges Mountains and take out a machine gun nest that was up there. This machine gun nest, these Germans were harassing the French people, and so my platoon, the platoon I was in, we had 2 trucks that we had 12 on each truck, I think it was, and we went out the next day after the general was there, about 8 o'clock at night, and drove up to an area where there was a path that you could walk up the mountain, and it was been easier to get to that machine gun nest. Well, there was snow on the ground, and I would say there was about 5 or 6 inches of snow, and this is in the mountains. And our sergeant was at the head of the line, and he started to walk up the path. We followed him, and as he walked, the Germans had put a wire across that path, and he happened to trip that wire. And as soon as he tripped that wire, that whole mountainside lit up like New York City in Times Square on New Year's Eve. I mean, it was really bright. And of course, as soon as it lit up like that, the Germans knew about where we were. And they started strafing the area. And fortunately, we were able to hunker down in a depressed area where we could get on our bellies and the bullets going over us rather than at us. And so we were pinned down. And like I said, this was at 8 o'clock at night, and we were pinned down all night. And our lieutenant, he said, it's no use to try to go up this way to get them. He said, I think we're going to have to go back down and try to come up behind them, take them from behind. And so we went down the mountain and started to go in an area where we could come up behind them. And it was just starting to get daylight. And they made me a second scout. I covered the left flank, and then they had a scout covering the right flank. And if you know anything about scouts, the scouts are usually out a little further than the rest of the platoon. And so we had white hoods over us to camouflage us in the snow. And as I was walking through the forest, I see some soldiers coming off to my left and working towards us. And I didn't know whether they were enemy or friend. So they got a little closer, and I noticed that one of the Germans didn't have the hood pulled down completely over his helmet. And if you've ever seen a German helmet, well, you know that it's not like ours. So it was the enemy. The enemy was off to our left there. As soon as I saw that German without having that hood down, I motioned everybody behind me, hit the ground, and start firing. And so we exchanged fire with each other for some time there. And during the exchange of fire, I was hit in the helmet by one of their bullets. It came in, hit the brim of my helmet, steel helmet, and the velocity of that bullet hitting my helmet caused me to black out momentarily. Now, while I was blacked out, that bullet went past my ear, never touched my ear. I'm in the prone position, understand, and it hit the wool-knit cap, and all that was hanging there was a couple threads. Never touched my ear, and the bullet went into this right shoulder, and so I was hurting a little bit as a result of that, and right after that had happened, one of the Germans closest to me threw a grenade like this. This is just a replica. I wasn't about to pick up that grenade for a souvenir. But what happened, I saw him throw this grenade, and as it was in the air, there wasn't anything I could do. If I stood up, I was going to get shot. So I decided to cover my head, put my face down into the snow, and I said a quick prayer. I called it a pop-up prayer. I said, God, protect me. And don't you know, this thing fell 3 feet in front of me and never went off. It was a dud. Well, like I said, I didn't stick around to pick it up because you never know whether it's delayed action or not. So I squirmed away from it, and then our lieutenant said, "We're going to form a skirmish line." And he says, "It's going to be across the forest here, and when I give the order, I want everybody to stand up and fire your rifles." He says, "I don't care if you see anything or not. Just keep firing away." But he said, "Before I do that, I'm going to call for some mortar fire before have the mortar crew back there lob a few mortars in about where we think they are." So that's what they did. He gave the order to get up and start firing. I couldn't fire from the shoulder. I had to fire from the hip because I was hurting because of the bullet that went into this shoulder. So we chased the Germans off of the high ground, took the high ground, and they went over to another mountain ridge. And while we were digging in to dig in a foxhole, I was like here, and there was another soldier just a little bit in front of me to my left. But those Germans could hear us digging, and what they did was just strafe the area where they thought about where we were. And I could still see the bullets crossing my foxhole, hitting this guy in the leg. But he wasn't, it wasn't life-threatening or anything like that, but he was out of it. And so we decided it's no use to chase them any further because the machine gun nest, they abandoned it. They were no longer there, and that's what they wanted to get rid of. So we figured that they would either get captured by other American soldiers, or else they would get to the Rhine River and cross over back into Germany. So we don't know what happened there, but that skirmish was over. So in the meantime, this shoulder's hurting. I went back to a medic, and he said, well, take your clothes off there. I took my overcoat. I had an overcoat on. I had a field jacket. I had a sweater. I had my OD shirt. As soon as I took the OD shirt off, this bullet fell down into the snow. And the medic picked it up, and he said, "Here's a souvenir for you." It never penetrated my shoulder. All it did was bruise it. Didn't draw any blood or anything like that, but it was just sort of sore, made the shoulder sore. And so I have this. This is only part of the bullet. I think part of the bullet broke off whenever it hit my steel helmet. And but when I got on leave to Paris, I had a picture taken, and I sent it home to my mother. And I know she was glad to get it. But anyways, I marked on here where the bullet had hit me on the helmet. And I couldn't find any paper to write on it But I had found in a bombed out house that we would stay in. We would stay in various bombed out houses instead of sleeping out on the ground. And I wrote this little letter to her. I said, "This is the slug that hit my helmet up in the Vosges Mountains around Colmar, France. A part of it is broken off. This is only about 2/3 the size of it. Keep it as a souvenir." I wrote that to my mother. So far as the grenade was concerned, I didn't pick that up, and I wasn't about to do that. We called them potato mashers, is what we called them. Anyways, that was just sort of a sample of what was happening on a day or two after I get there assigned to my division. And so no one had crossed the Rhine River yet. And there were 2 small islands out on the Rhine River close to where Colmar, France is. And they wanted somebody to go out there on those islands to see if anybody was there and if it could be a jumping off place to get across the Rhine River into Germany. And so they picked 8 of us. I was one of the 8. And we were practicing on a lake near to where we were staying here at Colmar, France. And 4 of us was in a raft. They had 2 rafts, and then we were pulling an extra raft behind us. I don't know what good that would have been if they had shot the rafts. I mean, what good is 2 shot up rafts? So I don't know why they chose me, because I couldn't swim. And but anyways, I was practicing with them, and they were teaching us how to be as quiet as possible as we would put the oars in the water. And so we practiced for a couple of days, and we're waiting on the order to go and do that mission. And fortunately, General Patton and his tank crews crossed at Remagen. They crossed the Rhine first, and we didn't have to go on that mission. And I was glad about that we didn't have to go, because I don't know what would have happened if we had. We eventually got into Germany, and we got into a small town called Hellenthal, Germany. And outside of the limits of this town was a tall hill, a hill that had nothing on it. It was, there was no foliage of any kind, but the Germans had occupied this before we got there. They had a trench built around the perimeter of this hill. So there was another division that got them out of that hill and we were to go in and relieve that division and hold the high ground and be there for what may happen. But as it happened, the Germans were down in the valley. We could hear them when they would go at nighttime. They had their mess kits. They rattled them a good bit, and they had artillery, and they would lob the 88 millimeter shells into the areas where we were, and one of the most disturbing things was the mortars that they would send off. As these mortars would come down, we called them screaming mimes, and they screamed like a woman, and you didn't know where they were going to land. It just made a loud noise and a disturbing noise, and some of our troops got wounded as a result of these mortars and also artillery. They had a tank down there that was firing also the 88 millimeter. And so one of the things that was very, very strange, the medics wanted to get in there to get the wounded out. And of course, you know, the medics, they had the red crosses on the front and red crosses on the back. Well, these medics came in and they were sort of hunkering down, and the firing stopped. The Germans stopped firing, and couldn't understand why they would stop firing. So we think that it would not have been an enlisted man that had given the order not to fire, that there must have been some German officer that had a little bit of compassion not to fire and let the medics get the wounded out. And that's what they did. They didn't fire a shot while these medics were taking the wounded out. And as soon as they got them out, they started back up again. And so then there was another division that came in and relieved us. And so we went out of there. Then sometime the latter part of April, I got sick. And I decided to go to the infirmary and get checked out. And the doctor said, after he checked me out, he says, "You have scarlet fever." I said, "How could that be? I had scarlet fever as a child. I didn't think he could get it again." He said, "Well, you have it." So they put me on an airplane, hospital ship, a hospital plane, and flew me back to Paris, and I was placed in a general hospital there. And when they took me in on the stretcher, before I was assigned a room, I was in sort of like a lobby area, laying on the stretcher, and in walks a guy from Chambersburg. And I knew him because he played football on the high school team. His name was Arnold Lesher. And he has since passed away. But I said, what are you doing here? He says, well, I'm driving a Jeep for a general. And so he was chauffeuring the general around. While the general was in the hospital, he was hanging around there. And so that's one guy I saw from my hometown. And so I was put in isolation for a while, and eventually I was able to get passes to go into Paris and do a little sightseeing. And as you might know, Paris was not bombed out. They may have had some small arms fire, but the Germans did not destroy the city like Putin is destroying the Ukraine. And but then they did have the French resistance that was sort of harassing the Germans while they were in Paris. And as a side note, I've been doing some traveling with the Greatest Generations Foundation. They have sent me over to Normandy, Omaha Beach, and into Paris, and various places in France. And it never cost me anything. They would not allow you to pay for anything. If we stopped at a convenience store someplace to get gas along the way, and I'd go over, try to get maybe some peanut butter crackers or something like that, reach for my wallet. They say, no, don't even think of it. They paid for everything. And so on the trip that I went over on in 2019, they took about 16 of us over on the Queen Mary. And we sailed out of New York, went into England, and then we'd either take the channel, or we'd take a ship across the channel to France. And so it was in August of 2019 is when the 28th Infantry Division, August the 24th and 5th, they liberated Paris without a shot. They didn't have to shoot everything up. And this was the 75th anniversary of it. And they were having a parade, and we veterans were on USA-made vehicles, either Jeeps or armored cars or tanks or whatever, and in the parade. And at the end of the parade, they went to a park area, and the Germans had a post made up that anybody from the French resistance, they would tie them up to this post and execute them. I mean, anybody with the French resistance got executed right away. So I was the only soldier from the 28th Division. They wanted me to lay a wreath at this post along with the mayor of Paris, which I did. And this was on August the 25th of 2019. Like I said, I made 6 or 7 trips. 2 of them were on to Queen Mary, and the rest of them we just flew over. But anyways, one day I got a pass, and I was in Paris, and things were going on as usual, like there wasn't any war going on in Paris. And I decided to take in a show. And you've heard of the Folies Bergère? I went to the Folies Bergère. And while I was in the Folies Bergère and came out on the street, there was a lot of jubilation. And people were just all excited, and the war was over in Europe. This was on May the 8th. And I couldn't stay. My pass was only till 5 o'clock. Now I had to be back if I expected to get any more passes. And so I couldn't stay, but the war had ended. And so after the war had ended, we were sort of in occupation. I eventually got back to my unit. And we were in occupation in Germany for a while. And then on July the 27th, our 112th Infantry embarked on a ship called General Bliss, B-L-I-S-S. And we sailed to Boston, got off at Boston, and they took us to a facility there where they gave us a steak. We had the first steak we had since we were in the service. And then eventually I got on a short furlough and had to report to Camp Shelby in Mississippi. Our division was destined to go to Japan. And when I was at Shelby, the atomic bomb had been dropped on Hiroshima, whatever. And that was the first one. And then whenever the second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, the Japanese had surrendered, and our division did not have to go to Japan. If we had gone to Japan and would still have to fight the Japanese, there would have been an awful lot of soldiers killed or wounded, because the Japanese were in such a frame of mind that they were taught never to surrender, to keep fighting. And so we didn't have to go at all. In fact, the division started to disband. For those soldiers that had enough points, they could get discharged. If you didn't have enough points, you were assigned to another division or another outfit someplace. In my case, I didn't have enough points, so I was assigned to bowling field in the Air Force, to the Air Transport Command. And on my resume, I had it, I was a clerk typist. I was able to type about 125 words a minute. I was a pretty good typist. And they assigned me to Bowling Field, that's where I stayed. And every day we went across to Gravelly Point. Now, Gravelly Point is where National Airport is. It's called Ronald Reagan Airport now. But there were two buildings there that had nothing but officers in it. And they were from all the divisions of the service, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard, the Army, and Merchant Marine. And they were in there composing a book like this. This is called the United States Strategic Bombing Survey. In other words, they did a survey of the bombing in Europe, and they were working on another book for the bombing in Japan and the islands that they had to fight on. And that was in 1946. And I was with this outfit until I got discharged on June the 26th, I think it was, of 1946. And so I was able to go home. But being stationed there at Gravelly Point, there was another soldier. He was a master sergeant. He was stationed out, I think, at Fort Belvoir, and he got home every week. He was from Chambersburg. He got home every week, and he took me home with him and picked me up because he could drive right past the building that I worked in, and it was on his way. It was not out of his way at all. And when it was ready to come back on Sunday night, why, he brought me back. So I finally then got discharged. But then in 2015, during a Veterans Day parade in our hometown, they had a few World War II veterans say a few things about their service, as I'm talking right now, and only it was very, very short. We could only speak about a couple minutes. And so they had a write-up in the paper, our hometown paper, Public Opinion, and they sort of featured me and my story about being shot in the helmet and having this grenade thrown at me. And one of the fellows that works at the Chambersburg Hospital, he does work for the Greatest Generations Foundation in our area. He read the article in the paper, and he asked me if I would be willing to go over to France. So I made my first trip. In fact, my brother was living at the time, and we both went over together to France, to Normandy, Omaha Beach, and with the foundation. And that was in 2016. And then in 2017, I went over, we flew over, and in 2018 I went over on the Queen Mary, and again I went on the Queen Mary in 2019. And they're going over again on the Queen Mary in November of this year, and I have been invited to go, but I declined. I have a medical problem that I think is better treated at home than on a ship. So I decided to turn it down. And but the foundation, in case you're interested, it's called the Greatest Generations Foundation, and the website is tggf.org, O-R-G. So you can go in there, and you might even see pictures of me in there, but they won't say your name. They don't put your names under the picture, and but they've been very good to me, and I've enjoyed going on those trips with them, especially since it didn't cost anything. So, anybody have any questions? Yeah.
I have a microphone. I'll make my way over this way for the questions. Who was first? I'll give it to you.
I wonder how I know your brother survived the war, but how did he make out? Did he graduate from OCS and become a pilot, or what did he do?
I'm not hearing. I'm not getting
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry. So how did your brother do after he went to OCS?
Oh, okay. He got transferred to the Air Corps, and he was training he was flying a C-46. That was carrying troops, and he was training to pull a glider behind the C-46, as well as having soldiers in the C-46 that would parachute into Japan. And they were getting ready to go to Japan. He was within weeks of going when the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. Now, some people would say that that was a terrible thing for the United States to do, was to drop that atomic bomb on Japan and kill all those people. Well, they had no doubts about bombing Pearl Harbor, killing all those sailors that were on those ships, and the sneak attack as it was. And if Harry Truman, I think he had quite a decision to make, but I think he made the right decision because he saved a lot of American lives. Certainly invading the main continent of Japan, we'd have had thousands of soldiers killed. So I, for one, am glad that he made that decision. That's my opinion. Anybody can differ what they want, but that's my opinion.
Good evening. Just have a quick question. I see the Army jacket there. That's your jacket on the table? Is that your jacket there? So your jacket,
What's,
your Army jacket here.
oh,
Yeah.
this is the Eisenhower jacket.
Right. This is yours?
This is mine.
So
This is what I wore.
you were in the Army Air Corps, but is
Well,
that correct?
Yeah, I was in the Air Transport Command.
So that was prior to when the Air Force had been established, but you kept on. Did they want you to go in the Air Force, or did they want you to stay in the Army?
They didn't ask me.
So, but what happened though? Did you end, because you would have had to have been in that transition period, right?
Well,
That was 47.
yeah, I had to go where they sent me at the time because my division disbanded, and
But you didn't change services.
huh?
You didn't change services
No,
because the Army Air Corps went into the Air Force shortly after.
Yeah.
And I'm asking, where were you in that transition?
I was just I went from the 28th Division. I was assigned to the Air Transport Command at Bowling Field, and that's where I was discharged from.
My confusion is that you have an Air Corps patch, but you were regular Army, so
Yeah.
it was still Army Air Corps
Yeah.
when you went there.
Yeah, they made me put this on.
The other question I have is if you could just explain some of the dress
Well,
that you have on today, that'd be
this-
wonderful. Thank you.
This is the French Legion of Honor, and this is the highest honor that France gives to soldiers. But there are several different categories. This is the lowest category that I'm in, and I received this here stateside. And I received it at the ambassador from France at his home, along with 5 other veterans. And one of them was a general that he got it at the same time that I got mine. And of course the Bronze Star. And this up here is a French poppy. Like we have the red poppies, they have this. I have written down here one of these is the World War II American defense, the American campaign, efficiency, fidelity, and honor. And the second row of these is the European, African, Mideast campaign, the Army of Occupation, commemorating victory in Europe, and as I said, the French poppy, and of course the 25th Infantry, 28th Infantry badge, and the French Legion of Honor. And this jacket gets a little heavy with all this metal on it. I can understand why these commanding officers get ribbons instead of hanging all this stuff. And if anybody wants to see any of this, this was a this has my picture in it. This was the liberation of Paris, 75th anniversary. So the few veterans that were at that ceremony are in this program. I was on Veterans Day, I forget what year it was. I did a short speech at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, in Washington, D.C. And they made a video of it. This is another one that I did at the Eisenhower Farm at Gettysburg. And this one is the Veterans Day at the FBI. This was the program that they had. This book tells of where the 28th Infantry Division fought in Europe. All that in red. This is just a picture of the 28th back in August of 1944, when they're marching down the Champs-Élysées in Paris. The Arc de Triomphe is in the background. And I got this is a cemetery in Normandy. I tell you, I have never seen such a precise, immaculate cemetery like they have for our U.S. soldiers who are buried over there. And you see all these crosses. They take care of those cemeteries. It's they're beautiful. This is just a program that they had on the ship, and I think they had my picture in here too. And this is a picture of the Queen Mary II, and this is just a certificate of the French Legion of Honor. And they have here a book with all the people that received the French Legion of Honor. And I'm in this book. They have them in alphabetical order, and I'm one of the many in here. I was down in Washington, D.C., and we were supposed to have an audience with President Trump. And it was during the pandemic. Somebody in the White House had gotten the virus, and they wouldn't let anybody in. We were there ready to go in, and they wouldn't let anybody go into the Oval Office. But this is from Trump, and it's got my picture on here too. Any other questions?
much for your presentation. We really enjoyed it, and we learned a lot of information. Thank you. Thank you for your service as well. We do want to just close everything up for that right now, like we normally do. And we welcome you to come up front in a few minutes and talk to Harold, shake his hand, and see his artifacts he has here, and pictures and everything else. We'd like to send our speakers a coffee mug of World War II logo on my shirt here with the victory metal ribbon on the coffee mug. So we'll plan to send you one of those in the mail. Oh, we actually, Charlie, save you the trouble. That's the trouble. Thank you, Charlie. I'll present it to you in person. Thank you, Charlie. The coffee mug right here. So you don't have to wait for the mail. So it's right here. Thank you, Charlie. And I hope you like that. And we want to thank you so much for coming again, and all of you the rest that came. So please come say hi to the world. We'll be happy to talk to you. Thank you.